All right, we will go ahead and get started as more people join the Zoom. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carly Lighthizer, and I'm the Extension Program Specialist for the UF IFAS Center for Public Issues Education and Agriculture and Natural Resources, also referred to as the PI Center. Thank you all for joining today's virtual Lunch and Learn. Today's topic is crucial communication strategies before, during, and after hurricanes, featuring Dr. Angie Lindsay. Dr. Lindsay is an associate professor and extension specialist within the University of Florida Department of Family, Youth, and Community Sciences. She also serves as the UF IFAS point of contact for the Florida Extension Disaster Education Network, also known as Florida Eden. A little bit of housekeeping before we get on our way. So today's webinar will begin with Dr. Lindsay's presentation, followed by a Q&A. Throughout the presentation, please leave all comments or questions in the Q&A feature, and they will be answered at the very end. When prompted by Dr. Lindsay, please feel free to reply through the chat feature. And before we begin, I wanted to give a little bit of background information on the PI Center and Florida Eden. So for those who are not familiar with the PI Center, we examine how people think about, form, and act on opinions regarding complex agricultural and natural resources issues. If you would like to learn more about us, you can go to picenter.com, so it's very easy to remember. And next up, I'm going to let Dr. Lindsay give a little background information on Florida Eden.
Thank you so much, Carly. Thanks everyone for being here today. So yes, for those of you that are not familiar with Eden, not as in the garden of, but we are actually the Extension Disaster Education Network, which is actually a nationwide network of extension professionals throughout the country at land-grant institutions, including the 1862, which are the larger, the 1890, which are our HBCU sister universities within the states, and then also 1994 Native American institutions also. So we have extension professionals throughout the country that work in different levels of disaster management within their communities. Excuse me. And we're excuse me, I'm a frog in my throat. We're a true network of individuals that share best management practices, but then also help each other out in times of disaster. So Florida Eden is an extension of that. We have 3 point of contacts. I am one for the University of Florida IFAS. We have Kimberly Davis, who is our contact with FAMU. And then we have Andrew Rapicki, who is our Sea Grant institution point of contact for Florida. So we're a multi-state effort, obviously supporting cooperative extension across the country. And here at Florida Eden, we support the 67 county offices throughout the state in disaster management before, during, and after disasters as well. And I think Carly just put in a link to our newsletter. We do a monthly newsletter with Florida Eden. I know many of you probably already receive it, but we do a monthly newsletter, and we'd love to have you join us again. It's once a month, so we don't crowd your inbox too much. But we'd love to have you join that, and that's a place to actually register for that newsletter as well. So again, thank you for being here.
And with that, I will end my slides and hand things over to Dr. Lindsay so we can get started with today's presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Carly. And let's see, we're testing my technological skills here. So make sure it works for me here. So great. Thank you so much. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. My background is in communication, specifically crisis communication in PR. So looking at communicating, especially any of the disasters, but particularly before, during, and after hurricanes is something that I'm very passionate about and enjoy talking about. So I've got a couple of points in here where I'm going to have y'all just answer a few questions, nothing too hard, I promise, but just kind of keep it interactive as well. And we will utilize the chat for that as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started here. All right. So learning objectives for today: understanding the importance and levels of communication before, during, and after crisis and disasters. Identifies ways in which to plan for effective communication at different levels of disaster management. Apply communication tools and strategies to different types of crisis and disasters as well. So hopefully you'll get some tips and strategies from this also. So there's a lot of language out there regarding crisis, disaster, emergency, issues management. I mean, we hear a lot of these when we start talking about crisis plans and disaster plans. And disaster communication and crisis communication do have differences. Crisis communication tends to take place on a smaller scale, This would be within an organization or on a particular issue as well. And disaster is just what you'd think. It occurs at a larger scale. In fact, and when you look at the difference between the term emergency and disaster, emergency means the local resources are able to handle that particular emergency. So you think of a car accident, you think of a house fire. Those are emergencies that your local resources are able to handle. A disaster like a hurricane, like a bigger storm, where you have to pull in resources from other counties, you have to pull in resources from the state. Those tend to be the disaster. So the local resources aren't able to handle the actual impact that it's going to have. And so looking at communication the same way, basically, is this something that can be managed internally and managed in-house, so to speak? Disaster, you tend to rely on other folks to help out, get that communication out. It's going to impact a lot more people. Therefore, your communication needs to be broader as well. I also wanted to add issues management in here because issues management, and I didn't actually include the theory or the model this time around, but it actually combines both disaster communication and crisis communication in a nonlinear model, which I tend to be a nonlinear thinker, so I really, really like this model. But it kind of combines both crisis and disaster together in a way that you can look at it depending upon where you are within this particular issue, basically. And then you get into the conversation of which came first, the issue or the crisis or the issue. And so we won't debate that today, but then obviously that model does help look at, okay, how can you manage an issue at the front end so it doesn't become a crisis and disaster later on? So looking at that life cycle. Again, I won't get too much into that, but just something to keep in mind if you're interested. The issues management model actually includes crisis and disaster as well. And again, because that disaster communication, and it takes basically all hands on deck, if you will, includes all levels of agency and organization involvement due to the vastness of destruction and impacts caused by a disaster, particularly hurricanes, which I know we're familiar with as well. So a pop quiz, and I know you will all make A's on it. So in thinking about preparing for a hurricane, who is your go-to source for information? And I'm also curious, do you utilize them at all stages, before, during, or after? So you can utilize the chat there and just tell me, who do you rely on for information? Do you go to social media? Do you have TV station? What is your go-to for information? Who's your trusted source? FDM and NOAA, great. National Weather Service. Oh, these are all great. Local emergency management, local television stations. Daryl Palmer, you're close to my heart. Eden website, IFAS disaster preparation and recovery. Absolutely. IFAS website, perfect. These are fantastic. Thank y'all very much for sharing. Yes. So great trusted sources of information for weather, NOAA and Dennis Phillips. Yes. And IFAS for how to. Absolutely. Yes. I think we all have our weather folks that we trust and really like. Here in Jacksonville, we have someone with the National Weather Service that I definitely listen to when she speaks as well. So NOAA for tracking, great. Yeah, the National Hurricane Center does a great job with their information, and they've done a great job also of talking about some of the new warning labels and cones, which we hope to have some communication out to y'all about that soon as well. Mike's weather page, yep, Mike's great as well. The prepping also comes from years of experience. That's a good point, Tyler. Like, we're Floridians, we're familiar with the prepping as well. So these are great. Thank you. I just wanted to get a sense of who are the trusted sources of information out there. Yeah, Mike's weather page is great. Big Dan the Weatherman. Yes, I've heard of Big Dan the Weatherman, Nick. Thank you very much. Yeah, these are great ones. Thanks. So, thinking about why communicate before, during, and after disasters, it feels like a question that we don't really need to answer. We all know the answer to this, but establishing a clear communication plan, you can become more prepared to manage disaster events and aid communities in the recovery process. Keeping in mind, audiences want to know as much information as possible. And being silent could lead to a loss of reputation, trust, goodwill, and/or resources as well. So you want to make sure that you're getting the information out there that your trusted sources or your trusted audiences are used to. Inform the audience of direct and potential direct and indirect impacts, obviously, from the just very nature of disasters and hurricanes. We can prepare as much as we can, but we have to have a level of reactivity because we never really truly know what the impacts are going to be. Obviously, provide those science-based messages, which Extension is known for. And it's a great way to get the information out there, especially being a trusted source of information. Exhibit that transparency to build trust with your audience, and just keep in mind that the information is crucial, and folks want the information as much as possible, basically. So, and especially in times like before, during, and after disasters, and I'll get in this after disasters as well, safety is such a key point in the communication of before, during, and after hurricanes. How do we ensure the safety of our community members? How do we ensure the safety of our audiences as well? So let's look specifically at communicating before disasters. Obviously, we want to look at before, during, and after. And that preparation, we always heard, be prepared, be prepared. So we want to talk a good bit about how best to get prepared and how to have that communication before disaster. Obviously, determining your key audiences before a crisis is crucial because you must be aware with whom you need to communicate with, who are you talking to, and be specific and think about the different scenarios that could impact those different audiences. And, I mean, we obviously think about the key audiences that we work with all the time, but I think it's also important to look at the audiences that may be within different audiences or pockets of audiences. I know when we've done some work after disasters with some of the farm worker populations after disasters, obviously, we're in urban areas, but we have these pockets of rural areas and pockets of unique audiences, like farm worker populations, that perhaps were not getting the communication messages that we were including for kind of a wider audience. So, how to make sure some of those unique audiences that we all work with from time to time are getting the information that they need as well, because they may not have access to some of the same things that the broader audiences are available to. So, and I mean, I just say ask the who, what, when, where, and why questions. Who are they? What is important to them? When is best to communicate with them? Where are they? Not only where are they physically, but where are they and what information they need to know? What information do they already have? Do we need to provide some background information to them before getting to the actual messages? And then how should you best communicate with them? That requires doing a little bit of research on the front end of understanding who your audiences are, how best to communicate, how best do they communicate as well. What are some ways in which that they are interacting with media? Are they interacting with media as well? So some good things to keep in mind when thinking about who are my audiences and what do I actually know about them. So think about those internal and external audiences and think about, I mean, who do we need to communicate beforehand in order to get the communication out there effectively before, during, and after as well, so that we all have the same messages or are sharing the same messages across the board as well. So I always tell the story that many years ago, I used to work at the Jacksonville Zoo and I was head of the crisis communication plan there. And obviously, you can imagine some of the disasters that potentially we did not have any major ones that came up at the zoo, but we had radios that we communicated with each other. And anytime anything happened at the zoo, and we had, just a slight mishap or whatever, it would have a code. Well, the media learned those codes pretty quickly, and so if it was a slow news day, the media would show up. And so I'm making sure that I communicated with everybody internally because you had no idea who the media was going to run into first. That was going to ask for a soundbite pretty quickly. So making sure that I shared the internal messages with the staff and the folks first at the zoo, so that we were all sharing the same message for that external soundbite that was going to go out through the media as well. So but then also determining who are your primary and secondary audiences, who will you communicate first, and are there secondary audiences that need to be addressed again? This kind of goes back to who are those maybe hard to reach audiences or those pocket audiences that aren't necessarily part of the big group, but maybe it's the smaller audiences as well. How is this in Spain, especially in the day of social media? How is this information going to be shared? And is it going to be reaching a different audience that it was originally intended as well? I mean, things get shared via social media, via text. So are we incorporating all the audiences that this message may be touch? And is it going to be received and interpreted the way that we had intended as well? So just it's a lot to think about the life of a message, like where does it start and where does it end? Almost like that secret game that we played as kids. It was like, is the message going to look the same when it ends, and who is it going to end with? So it's good to think about that life cycle of a message well. And understanding those audiences, again, how do they communicate? What channels do they use? Which ones do they trust? Just like I asked y'all, what are those key people that y'all listen to? Who are those folks that folks are looking out for? What's important to them, and when should you communicate? Are these folks that want information a lot? Are they wanting up-to-date information? Are they wanting information sporadically? So it's understanding those key audiences as well. And then once you kind of have who this is going to, developing that message is so important. You want to make sure you inform, and if you need to persuade. I mean, obviously, communicating before storms, we definitely want to persuade folks to plan. Make sure you have a plan. Make now is the time to get your supplies together. Now is the time to listen to your local officials and evacuate if you need to. So there is a bit of persuasion that goes on in that communicating before disasters as well. Those messages are essential information that you want your audience to grasp, even if they forget the deep details. I always used to say, think key messages, key messages. What are the one thing that I want folks to remember? What is the one thing that I want to make sure they get across if they don't hear anything else that I see? What else do I want them to get across? And so I would try to figure out how to say that message in different ways. So I'm not repeating myself, but I'm trying to get that one key message across, basically. Message should be designed to both inform your audience and persuade them to act. Obviously, we want them to act in preparation for a storm as well. Think of your message as that sound bite. What's one thing you want your audience to know? What you want them to take away with? And again, be crafty with it a little bit. Don't be afraid to. I know you'll feel like you're repeating yourself, but you want to make sure that that message is getting out there as much as possible. It's message development is the key to consistent, effective communication. Develop a few clear, simple messages for external audiences, including the media. Again, these should be super quick, kind of soundbite type messages. Developing a science or facts-based message will help you gain the trust of your audience. And they should inform the audiences as well. Content of the message to communicate at all levels of disaster management. What are we planning for? What are we currently doing? And what can we expect as well? So making sure that the messages that we are putting out there kind of covers those areas, especially in gathering for a storm. Here's what we're planning for. Here's what we're anticipating. Here's what we're doing now. Here's what you can expect as well. I'm sure many of y'all are thinking about communication messages that you've heard. A lot of them are out there. Like, this is what we're anticipating. This is what we're preparing for. This is what the potential impacts could be. And I can absolutely see some of the NOAA infographics in my head right now regarding sea level rise and some of the other things that are messaged out there as well. Continue on with message development. Be mindful of the various cultures and traditions that may impact some of your audience's interpretations of the messages. Use inclusive language, but then also go back into a little bit to doing your homework of those individuals. Know your audience and know what's important to them. How are they using social media? If you're going to use social media, how are they getting their information? Are they using a YouTube channel? Like, what are some ways maybe some of these different cultures and traditions and smaller, hard to reach audiences are receiving some of this information, and what's the best way to get that out to them? Address opposing views and false information, especially if asked, and especially that false information, while keeping the message cool, contained, and conflict free. You want to respectfully acknowledge any opposing perspectives, especially if dealing with the media, and the media will ask you about it. And you want to make sure that you focus on shared goals. And obviously, with before, during, and after hurricanes, that's keeping everybody safe. So those shared goals can be something that you can always go back to, especially if you're asked something that is a little conflicting from others. So I always say avoid no comment. You always aim to provide answers to reporters' questions. And I know when I've worked a lot with the media, I would say, I don't know, but I'll find out. And I would say, when is your deadline? I'll make sure you have an answer to this before your deadline today. So they respected that, and I did not have to say no comment as well. Obviously, there are times when you can't say, when you can't, especially if it's dealing with a person or a sensitive issue. There are times when you're not able to answer, and I would just explain that I'm not able to answer that because of personnel reasons. I'm not able to answer that at this time. That's a good one too. They're not able to answer this at time, but perhaps later on or something. Just giving them a reason of why instead of a no comment also. So that gets us a little bit into working with the media, obviously. People primarily gain their media through media outlets, including television, social networks. Therefore, working with the media before, during, and after a disaster and a hurricane is necessary to ensure that clear, timely, and accurate information is communicated to the public as well. Understanding that building those relationships in blue skies before hurricane season, before a crisis, before a disaster. Don't hesitate to reach out to them personally, especially if you're new in an area. Introduce yourself to them, introduce the area that you are going to be covering or the organization that you're part of as well. Follow them on social media, look at their past work, see what kind of things they cover, look at their tone and how they cover different things. Look at the stuff that they may be interested in, especially on their social media as well. Where do they get their stories or information? Who are some of the contacts? Who are the people that they are interviewing? Understand their deadlines, goals, and parameters. This is huge. This was a big thing for me when I work closely with the media, is understanding when their deadlines were for different, especially for television, for different broadcasts. How much time they had for a story. Was this is this a 30 to 45-second quick feel good story, or was this going to be a 60-minute, 90-minute story, or was this going to be a 2-minute to a 5-minute story? So definitely understanding what the parameters are as well as what the goals are as well. Think about the visuals to go with your message if you can, especially if somebody's sending out a television and television camera as well. They're going to want the visuals and the video to go with that also. And use understandable terms and communication points. We love our acronyms. We love our acronyms, but make sure that you definitely explain what those are to folks as well, and especially scientific terms too. If you're talking about complex issues or hard to understand issues or complex situations, that you explain some of those scientific terms in the acronyms as well. So I'm going to ask y'all to work again here in the chat a little bit. So do you have an example? I kind of giggle a little bit when I say this, of media communication before, during, and after a disaster that went well, or maybe one that did not go so well. Oh, thank you, Chris. Yes, thank you. COVID comes to mind. Yes, thank you, Tyler. Yes, definitely COVID comes to mind. Absolutely. Uh, Absolutely. Oh, Aubrey has a hand up. Carly, I don't know. Do we have capabilities to let folks speak or?
I think it's only the chat feature for this.
Oh, sorry, Aubrey. Can you give a brief in the chat?
Actually, I
Yeah.
can go to talk. Let me see.
Oh, a list of shelters works well in them. Yes, thank you. That's a good one, Wendy. And Chris said a reporter goes out to the affected area and talks to whomever, and the person is not trained and provides answers that are not appropriate. Yes, or their area of expertise. Yes, that's a good one, Chris. Those are some good ones. We've all seen them. I know to avoid wherever the Weather Channel Jim Cantori. Yes, we all are saying, "Oh my God!" I remember Anita down in South Florida said, "Well, it's probably not going to be good." I saw Jim Cantori at dinner last night, so we all have determined that wherever Jim Cantori can be is not a good thing. Absolutely. Commissioners think they know exactly what's happening and post in advance of the PIO. Oh, that's a tough one. Thanks, Heather. that is definitely tough. Yes. So I think we all have these examples, good or bad, and things to keep in mind when we're thinking about communicating as well. So thank y'all for sharing those. I always say media can be your friend. Believe it or not, media can be your friend. Again, consider interviews with media as opportunities to tell the story and include the necessary details as well, understanding their deadlines, anticipate those tough questions. That's one of the things that I used to do when I used to work with media is I used to sit down and think, okay, what are they going to ask me? What are they going to throw at me? What are they going to try to get me at? And most of them aren't trying to get you. And become a dependable and credible source for them as well. So, uh, oh, Jamie, I bet you do have some really good examples. So NASA, they had to get ahead of the media and issue statements in advance of questions about leaving the Artemis rocket on the launch in the path of an impending hurricane. We had to control that narrative in advance. Wow, Jamie, that's really interesting. Uh, thanks, Nicole. Not hurricane related, but norovirus outbreak. Oh gosh, at a 4-H camp Cloverleaf was first reported communicated as a. Oh no, I didn't know that. That's awful. Yes. So we all have these examples that are just we can learn from them and we have good examples also as well. So thank y'all for sharing those. I mentioned before you always have that proactive versus reactive planning. I mean, obviously we want to be as proactive as possible, but the very nature of disasters, including even though we sit there and watch National Hurricane Center for a week and a half about where this thing's going to come. I think Hurricane Michael showed us that you can never really be sure. Hurricane Ian as well. Those things can shift. And so you have to have a level of reactivity based upon natural disasters, based upon any disasters in crises as well. So disaster management involves a degree of both proactive and reactivity. Always aims, I mean, you plan for the worst and hope for the best. So always aim to be proactive through planning and mitigation. And this obviously, this preparation will form how you should react as well. I always tell folks, we're Floridians, so you think, oh, do you have a family plan? And some folks say yes, and some folks say no. And I said, even if you write some things down on an index card, because when you are in the middle of it, or when something is really when things are just happening around you, your adrenaline kicks in and you're not thinking as clearly. And being able to reference back to something that you wrote during blue skies is going to be helpful. We said we are going to meet here. We're going to say we're going to meet here, so it's been helpful to have some of that kind of pivot point a little bit to say, okay, I have something I can look back to a little bit. So I think people think that the plan has to be some big, beautiful plan. And look, we've laid this out and it's branded and it's pretty and it doesn't have to be. It's something that's useful, that's updated, and something that you keep accessible at all times, basically. Again, you want to be crisis prepared instead of crisis prone, and understand that reactivity is a given. It comes with the territory for disasters, like we talked about. I always say make sure you have a crisis management team and crisis communication team as well. That it shouldn't all be on one person. I know a lot of organizations say, we've got one communications person. That communication person, if there's a crisis or a disaster, needs several people as well. And conduct environmental scanning, utilize existing networks and partnerships as well. So, a crisis communication plan is a crucial tool in proactive planning. Your crisis communication plan should address both internal and those external audiences as well and follow essential elements. You definitely want to establish a team, designate a spokesperson or a backup, and I may say, and a backup to the backup, because sometimes you never know, and some spokespeople are going to be busy doing other things. So having several backups can be helpful as well. Gather the science and facts and continue to gather the science and facts. As we know, crises and disasters can be changing readily. So make sure you gather that information quickly. Develop those key messages. Again, think, what do I want folks to know? Those sound bites, what's the things that I make sure, but then make sure that it's easy to understand as well. And alert those internal audiences as well. The last thing you want to do is to have an external message out and your internal audience says, wait, I didn't know that. I found that out through this. So make sure the internal audiences and the appropriate people know first, and then that you get that external message out as well. I always tell the story. So I also worked for a nonprofit organization, and we actually gave out grants to folks. And so one of our grantees had an issue, and so with some of the books that they were using our grant money to purchase, well, the book publisher actually closed shop, and so was not able to provide the books. And these were very well loved books in the community that they handed out. And so I got a call from the media, and that's how I found this out. I did not find it out from the grantee themselves. And so the media called me and said, this is what's happened. So I was kind of on the spot, and I had to give information and had to provide, a message at that point in time. Well, I failed to call my board of directors before the news ran that night. And so my board of directors found out through the news. And so that did not go well. So I learned from my mistakes of make sure you're communicating with your internal audiences, what messages may be coming out in your external. So, there's a couple more in the chat. Sorry. Thank y'all. This is great. Let's see. Okay, thank you. Oh, Savannah, related utilities, we have a reiterate to media how we respond to outages, first with damage assessment, then critical customers like hospitals, large feeders, and then individual laterals. It's a tough battle because people get impatient. Yes. Also the influx of new residents, reiterating safety, hurricanes prep, and down power lines. Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, I think constantly reiterating and then thinking about every time that we have new people that have probably never been through this before. Those are good points. Thanks, Savannah. Okay, so talking about during disasters, what are some barriers in your opinion or experience to communicating during a crisis or disaster? Communicating line availability, yes, absolutely, Tyler. Thank you. Multiple communication streams. Thank you, Jamie. Yes, definitely. There's a lot. Too many people out there trying to be the lead voice. Thank you, Chris. Yes, I completely agree. Multiple political views wanting influence. Yes. We could do a whole nother webinar on the politics of disasters. These are great. Yes, some very good barriers, lots out there. Yes. Thank y'all. These are great. Okay. Reporters want in reacts instead of statements from informational sources. Yes. Thanks, Jamie. These are good. So during, be mindful of the crucial life-saving information that needs to be shared. Again, the safety. Assist with sharing that information, utilize your networks to gauge the situation, understand the priorities, and listen carefully. And I put this in the bottom. Number one, you're in the middle of a disaster, you're in the middle of a hurricane, take care of yourself and your family. That's the number one priority. Again, crucial life-saving information applies for you as well. So making sure that you take care of yourself also, and understand the priorities. Obviously, human life is going to be top number one as well. So understanding that, especially in communication, is going to be important, not only during the storm, but right after the storm as well. Safety, number one priority before, during, and after communication are the things that you can prepare to run during a disaster. Dark websites is something that we used when I worked at the Jacksonville Zoo. We actually had a dark website that we would just flip the minute we needed it, if there was a time of a disaster. And on that we had, this is old school, y'all. So we had our press packet on there, and we had our information on there of how to get in touch with each one of us with our cell phones and everything. So, but that was all built during, blue skies, when we didn't have an issue going on. We built all of this in preparation for something happening. What's the most important information needed? Make sure you cover all the bases. How can people receive information now, especially with hurricanes and the information? Obviously, cell phone towers go out, different ways of communicating goes out. What do you have access currently, and what would you want to know? Thinking about what would you want to know during this time as well. So making sure that information is out there. I'd say definitely trying to share the information from our local authorities is key as well. But also documentation. I know this is hard, but trying to keep a record of events that happen during disaster is a great way to stay organized and have notes for references in the future. For those of y'all that know me, like I say all the time, each Each hurricane has been a learning point. I feel like you learn has been the best teacher. I feel like you learn with each one of them. And times disasters, although they can be really hectic, at the end of the day, once things have quieted down, being able to still document, okay, what went well, what did not go well. And this can be as simple as putting notes in a physical notebook, keeping things on your smartphone notes app. I'm queen of that. Voice memos on your smartphone, sending an email to yourself with the notes, or having a formal conversation with a colleague and just saying, hey, can you write this down? Because I'm standing in the middle of knee deep water and I can't write this down right now, but we need to make sure with that when we're preparing for next time, we have this, this, and this. So just things to keep in mind that uh, try to keep track of what's in your mind as an artist. We need to make sure that that's handled later, better later. Situation report. This is something we started doing because the work that we've been doing with the state emergency operations center, they asked us to do a situation report at the end of each day, just to record the current situation plus current and future operations. So it's been a good way for us to document what currently is going on, but then actually what you can't see further down there as future needs, future operations, so we can look back at these later on and say, okay, what worked, what did not work as well. So it's a good way to actually being asked to do this was a good way to make sure that we were documenting what we were doing as well. And this is just a simple FEMA form, folks, and we just downloaded it and put IFAS logo on Florida Eden logo on it. So super easy to figure out. So the last section that I wanted to go over is communicating after disasters. And as we know, recovery, especially from hurricanes, can be very long. So recovery and make sure they keep that communication on is so important as well. So recovery can take a super long time and can impact those many different audiences that we talked about in so many different ways. Is there a new audience that was impacted that we had not planned for? Is there a new audience that we need to be looking out for? Is there somebody that we maybe were not communicating with before and during that now we need to communicate with as self? Information changes so rapidly during recovery and how best to assist. Again, going back to that sharing information, especially from our local government and local services and state services as well. Do we need to create information in easy to formats? It's easy to receive, especially for some of those hard to reach audiences as well. And how to communicate. Feel free to get creative. Can you meet people where they are? Understand the needs. Ask. I know for some folks, I've heard of people saying, well, we went to everybody, we knew that everybody was going to go meet for a barbecue after such and such storm. So we took the information there. So sometimes meeting people where they are, some of that face to face, old timey face to face information, especially after times of hurricane when we don't necessarily have our cell phones working, that would be helpful to get that information face to face as well. Be prepared for the long haul because it can be tough. And you're a trusted source of information. Be there for them. Be consistent in messaging, use branding, and be careful not to overload. Be strategic in your planning and sharing. Obviously, we want to share the most pertinent information, but people are getting a lot of information and are trying to process a lot right now. So just thinking about, again, think about what you may be going through and how much is how much as well. How much is too much, basically. Evaluation. Now, this is part like you kind of have to remind me to do this because I feel like once something's over, I'm like, oh, we're done. All right. But it's so important after something has ended, once the disaster is over and communication with the media has ended, or how you evaluate how and your team have managed the situation. So a hot wash is something that is used within disaster management. It's used at the local level and the state level as well. And so this is a way for emergency management folks to come together to basically talk about what went well, what did not go well, what do we want to do in the future as well. So if you're involved in that, that's fantastic. It's a great way to understand what went well and what we should be done in the past as well. But I always also say the hot wash is something that anyone can do also. In those questions that we've talked about before, where did the communication fail? What can be done during blue skies to keep this from happening again? How can we address this in the future? Are there other people that should be involved and we're not? What did we miss? What came out of the blue, so to speak? What was something that we did not anticipate that? Hurricanes themselves have those cascading disasters, obviously, like things that obviously, okay, we had the storm come through, but now we have horrible storm surge, we have horrible flooding. So you have those cascading disasters, but then you also have complex disasters as well. I talk all the time about some of the rural communities that were impacted after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. And they say all the time that we were a community living in a crisis that was interrupted by a disaster. So you're exacerbating some crises that were already in particular communities by adding in this natural disaster as well. So, and review the disaster occurred. Can we've done anything to prevent the disaster? And this is especially true with non-natural disasters as well. And how was the disaster managed? How was information disseminated? Was one person designated? Did we need to have more? And were there miscommunications as well? So, and just some things to think about after the disaster as well. Examine the similar scenarios. What would you do in a similar situation in the future? What did others do in similar situations? We did this a lot when we were when I worked at the Jacksonville Zoo. We'd look at what happened at other zoos and say, okay, if that happened here, what would we do? And they started calling them doom and gloom meetings because they were like, oh, here comes Angie with the doom and gloom meetings. But it was a great way to plan for, okay, if this were to happen to us, what would we do? And I said it before, but making sure that that crisis communication plan is a living and breathing document. How can you change or improve your crisis communication plan after the disaster? Assess it. Make sure that you and numbers change, people change. Make sure that you've changed that information in there as well. And what planning can you do in blue skies? How can you set up your standard operation procedures and utilize tools to be more efficient and effective in the long run? And to make the impacts less and make you less stressed in the middle of a hurricane as well. So that's it. I think I have gone over my time almost, Carly. So I apologize, but I will escape out and take any questions. And I appreciate y'all sharing all the great stuff in the chat as well. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we are actually right on time. So if anyone has any questions or comments, requests, or anything like that, please feel free to drop it in the chat or the Q&A feature. Take your pick. We do have chat open for this webinar. I also dropped a couple other things in the chat for y'all to peruse while we're thinking of questions maybe. We have an evaluation survey that we would love it if you could complete. It's very short, only a few questions, so that we can continue to offer timely and relevant learning events like today's webinar. I also wanted to shout out a webinar we are having next week at the exact same time, next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, also featuring Dr. Lindsay, as well as a collaboration between a couple different partner programs on an emerging issue that I'm sure you all know about, New World Screwworm. So that will be next week. I dropped that registration link in the chat. And as always, if you can't make the live event, the recording is always available after the fact on our Pi Center YouTube and through our listserv. So I will let you all take some time to drop some questions. Otherwise, if you don't have any questions, you are welcome to leave, and we appreciate you all being here today. Right, with that, I think I will stop the recording.